The soft hum of the research vessel's engines filled the observation deck as Alan stood before the massive viewing window, his breath fogging the glass as he leaned closer. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but it wasn't their familiar twinkle that held his attention. Strange patterns of light danced in the distance, moving in ways that defied the normal laws of space. "Human, you are too close to the window again," came the clicking voice of First Observer Rex behind him. The tall, insectoid alien's antennae twitched with disapproval. "The safety protocols clearly state." "I know the protocols," Alan said, not taking his eyes off the mesmerizing display outside. "But look at those energy readings." He gestured to the holographic display floating beside him. "They're not random. There's a pattern there." The ship's sensors had picked up the unusual energy signatures 3 days ago, leading the Galactic Council's research vessel to this remote sector of space. What they had initially thought to be a stellar nursery was proving to be something far more interesting. Rex's compound eyes reflected the shifting lights as he maintained a careful distance from the window. "The captain has ordered all crew to maintain safe observation distances. The last research vessel that approached such phenomena never returned." Alan smiled slightly. As the only human aboard the vessel, he'd grown used to his alien colleagues' cautious nature. Where they saw danger, he saw possibility. It was why the Galactic Council had started accepting humans on their research missions in the first place. They called it useful, reckless curiosity. The lights outside suddenly pulsed, and a massive shape moved through the void. It was like watching a whale breach through ocean waves, except the whale was made of pure starlight, and the ocean was the fabric of space itself. The creature had to be at least as large as their research vessel, its body rippling with colors that human eyes had no names for. "Magnificent," Alan whispered, pressing his hand against the cold glass. The ship's sensors went wild, recording data faster than their computers could process it. More shapes appeared behind the first one, moving in what almost looked like a coordinated dance. "Step back from the window," Captain Mira's voice echoed through the observation deck. The blue-skinned captain strode in, her 4 arms working multiple control panels simultaneously. "We're detecting massive energy fluctuations. These creatures could tear this ship apart without even noticing our existence." But Alan couldn't step back. He was noticing something in the creatures' movements, something familiar. The way they curved through space, the way they seemed to move in response to each other. It reminded him of something he'd seen back on Earth. "They're like wild horses," he said suddenly, earning confused looks from both Rex and the captain. "Look at their movement patterns, the way they stay in formation, the way they react to each other. It's just like watching a herd of wild horses on the plains." "Horses?" Captain Mira asked, her secondary arms crossing in what Alan had learned was a sign of skepticism. "Those Earth creatures you humans domesticated for transportation before developing proper technology." "Yes, exactly." Alan's excitement grew as he watched the creatures. Everyone thought horses were just dangerous wild animals too, until humans figured out how to approach them, how to earn their trust. These beings, they're not just random phenomena. They're alive, and they're social creatures. A larger shape emerged from the darkness, its body blazing like a newborn star. The smaller creatures adjusted their formation around it, like foals around a mare. The ship's sensors were recording everything, but Alan knew raw data couldn't capture what he was seeing. These weren't just energy beings. They were a family, a herd. "Captain," he said, finally turning away from the window, "I'd like to request permission to launch a closer observation probe." "Denied," Captain Mira said immediately. "The risk is too high. We came out here to study new forms of life," Alan argued, his voice passionate but respectful. "These creatures could revolutionize our understanding of space itself. Someone just needs to be brave enough to take the first step." The captain's upper eyes narrowed while her lower ones studied the sensor readings. The Council's protocols explicitly forbid close contact with unknown phenomena of this magnitude. The Council also said humans were too primitive to join deep space missions, Alan reminded her with a slight smile. Sometimes protocols need to be updated based on new understanding. As if to emphasize his point, one of the smaller light creatures broke formation for a moment, dancing closer to the ship before rejoining its herd. Its movement left a trail of sparkling energy in its wake, like a curious child drawing patterns in the sand. "Give me a chance," Alan said softly. "I think I know how to approach them." 3 days had passed since their first sighting of the light creatures, and Alan hadn't left the observation deck except to sleep. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by holographic displays showing various data readings and historical records. The creatures, which the crew had started calling stellar sprites, continued their graceful dance through space outside the window. The ship's computer had been searching through the Galactic Council's archives, finding scattered references to similar beings throughout history. None of the stories ended well. 200 years ago, a mining fleet had encountered them near the spiral arm. 3 ships were lost. 500 years before that, an exploration vessel had tried to capture one for study. It was never seen again. "You see," Rex clicked, pointing a segmented arm at the records. "Every species smart enough to reach the stars has learned to avoid these beings. They are forces of nature, not animals to be tamed." Elen rubbed his tired eyes, but his voice remained excited. "That's exactly what they used to say about lightning, about the ocean, about every powerful force humans encountered. But we learned to work with them, not against them." He pulled up a new display, showing the energy patterns the sprites produced. Next to it, he placed an old video from Earth, a herd of wild horses running across a vast plain. The patterns were surprisingly similar. The way they moved in groups, the spacing between individuals, even the way they communicated through movement. Captain Mira entered the observation deck, her steps silent on the metallic floor. "The Council has responded to our report. They've ordered us to maintain distance and continue observation only. No probes, no attempts at contact." But Alan had made another discovery. He waved his hand, bringing up a new set of readings. "Look at this. When we first arrived, their energy outputs were erratic, defensive, but they've changed over the past few days. They're becoming more stable, more rhythmic. They're getting used to us." The smallest sprite, the one Alan had nicknamed Scout, had developed a habit of breaking from the herd to drift closer to the ship before darting back. Each time, it came a little nearer. The larger ones would call it back with pulses of energy that the ship's sensors interpreted as complex gravitational waves. "They're curious about us," Alan explained, pointing to Scout's latest approach. "But they're also cautious, just like any wild creature encountering something new. The previous attempts at contact failed because they tried to capture or control them. Nobody ever tried to just understand them." Captain Mira's lower arms tapped commands into a console while her upper arms remained crossed. "Understanding is not worth the risk of destruction. These beings could crush this ship like an egg if they wished. Or they could help us," Alan countered. He stood up, walking to the window where Scout was making another close pass. "Think about it. They manipulate gravity and space itself. Imagine what we could learn if we could communicate with them. Not capture them, not control them, but work with them." The ship's sensors suddenly lit up with warnings. Scout had come closer than ever, almost touching the ship's outer hull. Energy readings spiked, and the emergency systems prepared to raise shields. "Don't," Alan called out. "Look at the pattern. It's not attacking." The small sprite was moving in a circular pattern around the ship, leaving a trail of sparkling energy in its wake. The pattern matched the ship's own energy signature almost perfectly. It was mimicking them, trying to understand them just as they were trying to understand it. "Remarkable," Rex clicked softly, his scientific curiosity temporarily overcoming his caution. "It's attempting communication. It's trying to learn about us," Alan said, smiling as Scout completed another circle. "Just like a young horse approaching a fence for the first time. It needs to know we're safe before it gets too close." Captain Mira studied the readings with all 4 eyes. The Council has centuries of experience with these phenomena. They have labeled them as dangerous for good reason. The Council had centuries of experience with humans too. Alan reminded her. They called us too aggressive, too reckless, too primitive to join galactic society. But they were wrong. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective to see new possibilities. Outside, Scout finished its dance and returned to its herd. But this time, 2 more sprites broke away from the group, their light bodies pulsing with what Alan was beginning to recognize as curiosity. Step by step, they were building trust. The ship's medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Alan lay on the examination table while the ship's doctor, a tall being made mostly of crystal, ran scanning equipment over the strange burns on his arm. He had gotten them during his latest observation session, when one of the stellar sprites had passed particularly close to the ship, causing a surge of energy through the observation deck systems. The burns are minor, the doctor chimed, her crystalline form catching the light. But this is exactly why the Council advises against close contact with these beings. Their energy signatures are incompatible with organic life. Alan sat up, flexing his arm carefully. Not incompatible, just intense, like trying to pat a horse without letting it get used to your presence first. They don't mean to hurt us. They just don't know their own strength. The doctor's crystals shifted in what Alan had learned was an expression of concern. You speak of them as if they were simple animals. These are ancient cosmic beings that have destroyed entire ships. But only when those ships tried to capture or control them, Alan pointed out. He pulled up a holographic display showing the latest sensor readings. Look at their behavior patterns over the last week. They're not aggressive. They're defensive. Every time a ship in the past tried to contain them, they reacted like any frightened animal would. They fought back. The door slid open, and Captain Mira entered, all 4 arms holding different datapads. The Council has reviewed your latest report. They're intrigued by your observations, but still maintain that closer contact is too dangerous. Alan stood up, excitement overriding the lingering pain in his arm. But they haven't ordered us to leave. They're starting to see what I see. These beings aren't just random space phenomena. They're intelligent, social creatures. And they're trying to understand us just as much as we're trying to understand them. He waved his hand, expanding the holographic display to show the complex dance of energy patterns the sprites had been performing around the ship. See these movements? They're not random. They're learning our ship's energy signature, adapting their own outputs to match it. They're learning to be gentle. Scout, the smallest sprite, had become particularly bold in its approaches to the ship. It would come close enough now that they could see the intricate patterns of light flowing through its body, like rivers of starlight. Other sprites had started following its example, each approach careful and measured. Watch this, Alan said, pulling up a comparison display. On one side was footage of a wild horse being gradually accustomed to human presence. On the other, recordings of the sprite's approaches to the ship. The patterns were startlingly similar. They're using the same gradual approach, the same testing behaviors. They're trying to establish trust. Rex entered the medical bay, his antennae twitching with nervous energy. The sprites are displaying unusual behavior. You should come to the observation deck. They hurried through the corridors, Alan ignoring the doctor's protests about rest. When they reached the observation deck, they found Scout and 2 other sprites performing an intricate dance around the ship. But this time, instead of just matching the ship's energy signature, they were producing a new pattern. They're not just copying us anymore. Alan breathed, watching in amazement. They're inviting us to join their dance. They're trying to teach us their language. Captain Mira's lower eyes widened while her upper ones narrowed in concentration. Even if you're right, how could we possibly communicate with them safely? The energy levels they produce would destroy any probe we sent out. Alan smiled, an idea forming in his mind. Maybe we've been thinking about this the wrong way. We don't need to match their power. We need to show them we understand their language. He turned to the captain, his eyes bright with excitement. "Remember how I told you humans used to gentle wild horses? The key wasn't in having the same strength as the horse. It was in learning to speak their language, to show them we understood their ways." Outside the window, Scout performed another complex pattern, its light body pulsing with what Alan was now certain was an invitation. The other crew members watched in nervous fascination as the dance continued, the barrier between their species beginning to blur with each passing moment. The maintenance bay hummed with activity as Alan made final adjustments to the small shuttle. He had spent 3 days modifying it, installing special energy dampeners and reconfiguring its output systems to mimic the gentler patterns they had observed from Scout. The shuttle was tiny compared to the main research vessel, about the size of an old Earth car. "This is madness," Rex clicked, watching Alan work. "The Council will never approve this plan." "The Council doesn't need to approve," Captain Mira said, surprising them both. She stepped forward, all 4 arms holding different diagnostic tools. "This is a research mission, and we're conducting research. As long as only volunteer crew members are involved, we have some flexibility in our methods." Alan slid out from under the shuttle, his face streaked with grease. "Thank you, Captain. I know this goes against everything you've been taught about these beings." "It goes against all logic," she admitted, her lower eyes scanning the shuttle's modifications. "But your observations have been compelling. And in all my years of space exploration, I've never seen these creatures behave the way they do around our ship." The shuttle systems came online with a soft whine. Alan had stripped it down to the bare essentials, removing everything except life support and the modified energy systems. The less technology there was to interfere with the sprites' natural energy fields, the better. "The trick with wild creatures isn't to match their strength," Alan explained as he ran final checks. "It's to show them you understand their language. Horses communicate through body language and energy. These beings seem to communicate through light and gravitational patterns." He pulled up a holographic display showing the dance patterns Scout and the other young sprites had been teaching them. "They've been showing us how to move, how to approach. Now we just need to show them we've been paying attention." The maintenance bay doors opened to the void of space. Through the energy shield, they could see the herd of sprites moving in their eternal dance. Scout broke away from the group immediately, approaching the bay as if it had been waiting for them. "Remember," Alan said, climbing into the shuttle, "if anything goes wrong, don't try to rescue me. These beings don't respond well to aggressive actions. Just wait, and let them make the next move." Captain Mira's upper arms made a gesture of agreement, while her lower ones inputted launch coordinates. "You have 1 hour. If you haven't returned by then, we'll send a message to the Council reporting your heroic sacrifice in the name of science." Alan laughed, appreciating her attempt at humor. "Just make sure to mention in that report that I was right about them." The shuttle systems hummed to life, and Alan felt the familiar weightlessness as it lifted off. The maintenance bay shield parted to let him through, and then he was in space, floating among the stars. The sprite's light made everything else seem dim in comparison. Scout approached first, its massive form dwarfing the tiny shuttle. Alan activated the modified energy system, beginning the simple pattern they had observed so many times. It was like offering your hand to a nervous horse, letting it catch your scent. The sprite paused, its light dimming slightly. Then, to Alan's amazement, it changed its own energy pattern to match the shuttle's gentler output. They moved together, shuttle and sprite, in a slow dance through space. More sprites broke away from the herd, curious about this strange new dance. Alan's heart raced as he guided the shuttle through the patterns they had taught him, each movement precise and careful. One wrong move, one surge of energy too strong, and it would all be over. But the sprites didn't attack. Instead, they began to move in harmony with the shuttle, their light bodies creating a dazzling display of cosmic ballet. Through the shuttle's windows, Alan could see the research vessel floating in the distance, its sensors undoubtedly recording everything. Scout moved closer, close enough that its light filled the entire shuttle with a warm, gentle glow. In that moment, Alan understood something that would change galactic society forever. These weren't just beings to be studied or avoided. They were partners, waiting for someone brave enough to learn their dance. The entire crew gathered in the observation deck, watching in amazement as Alan's shuttle danced with the sprites. It had been 2 weeks since his first successful contact, and each day brought new discoveries. The shuttle floated among the massive light beings, its modified energy field pulsing in harmony with their natural rhythms. "Look at this reading." Rex clicked excitedly, his scientific curiosity finally overcoming his natural caution. They're not just tolerating the shuttle anymore. They're actively adjusting their energy output to protect it. They understand it's fragile. Captain Mira studied the data with all 4 eyes, her expression showing a mix of disbelief and wonder. "In all my years of space exploration, I've never seen anything like this." The Council's latest message was full of questions. They want to know everything about your methods. The shuttle gracefully spun through a complex pattern, led by Scout, who had become Alan's constant companion. The young sprite had taken to following the shuttle like a puppy, mimicking its movements and teaching it new energy patterns. Through the shuttle's communication system, Alan's voice came through filled with excitement. "They're not just teaching us their movements," he explained. "Each pattern has meaning. It's a language, a way of sharing information through light and gravity." The shuttle performed a new sequence, its energy field rippling in waves. Scout immediately responded with a matching pattern, adding its own variation. "Watch this," Alan said. The shuttle changed its energy output to a pattern they had learned last week. Almost immediately, 3 adult sprites moved to create a protective formation around the shuttle. That's their signal for danger or distress. They're responding to protect what they now see as part of their herd. The doctor's crystalline form sparkled as she monitored Alan's vital signs from the medical station. His neural patterns are showing increased activity, but no signs of stress. The sprite's energy field isn't harming him anymore. It's as if they've learned to be gentle with him, Captain Mira finished, just like he said they would. Outside, Scout was teaching the shuttle a new dance. Its massive form moved with surprising grace, creating complex patterns of light that the shuttle carefully copied. Other young sprites had joined in, turning the lesson into a game. They would create patterns and wait for the shuttle to respond, showing obvious joy when it got the sequence right. "The implications of this are enormous," Rex said, his antennae twitching with excitement. "If we can learn their language, understand their movements, think of what they could teach us about space itself. They exist partly in dimensions we can barely detect." Alan's voice came through again. "It's more than that. They're not just teaching us about space. They're teaching us about themselves, about their society, their way of life. Each pattern tells a story." The shuttle performed a complex spiral movement that made the observing crew gasp. "That one means family or home. They're sharing their culture with us." Suddenly, something unprecedented happened. The largest sprite, the one Alan had nicknamed Elder, approached the shuttle directly. Its massive form dwarfed both the shuttle and Scout, its light so bright that the ship's filters had to adjust. The crew held their breath, watching as the ancient being moved closer than any adult sprite had ever come. "Don't move," Captain Mira whispered, though Alan couldn't hear her. "Let it make the first move." Elder's light dimmed to a gentle glow, and it began a new pattern, one they had never seen before. The energy readings were complex but perfectly controlled, each pulse and wave carrying meaning. Scout watched attentively, like a child observing an important lesson. "I think," Alan's voice was filled with awe, "I think it's giving us permission. It's accepting us as partners." The shuttle slowly began to mirror Elder's pattern, its modified systems straining to reproduce the complex sequence. When it finished, Elder's light pulsed with approval. In that moment, everything changed. The barrier between species that had existed for centuries began to fade. A new chapter in galactic history was beginning, all because one human had been brave enough to see these cosmic beings not as forces to be feared, but as creatures to be understood. News spread quickly through the galaxy. Within a month, 3 more research vessels had arrived at the coordinates, each carrying human crew members eager to learn from Alan's breakthrough. The space around the ship had become a classroom of sorts, with multiple modified shuttles practicing the intricate dances of communication with the sprites. "Remember to keep your energy output smooth and steady," Alan instructed through the comm system as he watched a new pilot attempt the greeting pattern. "They can sense hesitation and uncertainty. Trust your movements, just like you would when approaching a nervous horse." The pilot, a young man named Tom, guided his shuttle through the sequence. His movements were careful but confident, and Scout darted forward to meet him, its light body pulsing with welcome. The other ship's crews watched in amazement as more sprites broke away from the herd to greet the newcomers. "I still don't understand how you humans do it," Rex clicked, monitoring the energy readings from the observation deck. "Your species hasn't even been in space for 5 centuries, yet you've accomplished what others couldn't in thousands of years." Alan smiled as he watched another shuttle successfully complete its first contact. "That's exactly why we can do it. We're still new to space. We haven't learned to fear it yet. To us, everything out here is still wonderful and new." The main viewing screen lit up with an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Captain Mira's 4 arms moved quickly over the controls as she accepted the call. The stern face of the head counselor appeared, its multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "We have reviewed the complete data from your mission," the counselor announced. "While your methods were unconventional, the results are undeniable. The Council has approved the formation of a new division, the Sprite Ranger Program." A cheer went up from the human crew members. Even the alien crew showed signs of excitement. Rex's antennae quivered, and the doctor's crystals chimed melodiously. Captain Mira's upper eyes crinkled in what Alan had learned was a smile. "Furthermore," the counselor continued, "we request that Alan oversee the training program. His understanding of these beings is unprecedented, and his methods must be properly documented and taught to others." Outside, the space had become a ballet of light and motion. Shuttles and sprites moved together in complex patterns, each movement carrying meaning. The younger sprites especially seemed to enjoy teaching the newcomers, showing obvious pleasure when the humans successfully learned new sequences. "It's not just about the patterns," Alan explained to a group of new trainees gathered in the briefing room. "It's about understanding their nature. Humans have a long history of working with powerful creatures, horses, elephants, whales. We learned long ago that true partnership comes from respect, not control." He pulled up footage from Earth, showing various animal trainers working with their charges. "See how the trainers move, how they stay calm and confident. The animals can sense their energy, their intentions. The sprites are the same way. They don't respond to our technology or our power. They respond to our spirit." The new human crew members absorbed every word, their eyes bright with excitement. They came from different backgrounds: former animal trainers, deep-sea explorers, wilderness guides, but they all shared that uniquely human blend of courage and compassion. Tom's voice came through the comm system, filled with wonder. "They're showing us something new. Look at these energy patterns. They're unlike anything we've seen before." Everyone rushed to the windows. The entire herd of sprites had gathered, their light bodies moving in perfect synchronization. Elder floated at the center, guiding them through a complex series of movements that made the very fabric of space ripple. "They're not just accepting us," Alan realized, watching the beautiful display. "They're celebrating us. This is a partnership that will change everything." He turned to the eager faces of the new Rangers. "We're not just learning their language. We're creating a new one together. A language of trust between species." The sprites' dance continued, their light filling the darkness of space, with hope for a future where humans' unique ability to connect with powerful beings would help bridge the gap between all species in the galaxy. 5 years had passed since the first contact with the stellar sprites, and space travel would never be the same again. Alan stood at the observation deck of the new Ranger Academy, watching as graduates performed their final tests. Dozens of shuttles moved in perfect harmony with their sprite partners, their combined light creating patterns that seemed to bend reality itself. The Academy had been built at the edge of what was once considered dangerous space, but was now known as the Sprite Gardens. Hundreds of the light beings made their home here, working with human rangers to explore the deepest reaches of the galaxy. Scout, now fully grown but still recognizable by its playful movements, led many of the training sessions. The latest long-range expedition team has returned, Rex announced, entering the observation deck. The years had added more segments to his exoskeleton, a sign of wisdom among his people. They've mapped regions of space we never thought possible to reach. The sprites helped them navigate through quantum storms that would have destroyed any normal ship. Alan nodded, pride filling his chest as he watched a young ranger perfect a particularly difficult maneuver. And to think the council once considered them too dangerous to approach. All they needed was someone to understand them. The Academy's main hall had become a museum of sorts, displaying records of that first contact and the rapid progress that followed. Holograms showed the development of the modified shuttles, the discovery of new sprite languages, and the groundbreaking achievements of human sprite partnerships. The latest group of alien applicants has arrived, Captain Mira said, walking in with her 4 arms full of data pads. She had retired from active duty to help run the Academy, her experience proving invaluable. More species are starting to show the patience needed to work with the sprites. Your methods are spreading. Through the window, they could see a massive sprite convoy arriving. The light beings had learned to wrap their energy fields around larger ships, allowing for safe passage through parts of space that were once considered impossible to navigate. They moved like a school of giant, luminous whales, guiding vessels through the cosmic seas. To think it all started because humans never lost their connection with powerful creatures, Rex clicked thoughtfully. Your species' history with Earth's animals prepared you for something far greater than anyone could have imagined. A group of young rangers in training rushed past, their excitement palpable. Today was their first solo flight with their sprite partners, a moment they had trained years for. Alan remembered his own first flight, the mix of fear and wonder he had felt. Now these feelings were being passed on to a new generation. Look, Alan pointed as Elder emerged from the depths of space. The ancient sprite's light had not dimmed with age, and its presence still commanded respect from both humans and sprites alike. It had become a regular visitor to the Academy, seeming to take pleasure in watching the partnerships grow. Elder began a complex dance, one that Alan now recognized as the story of first contact. Other sprites joined in, their movements adding layers to the tale. The story had become legend among both species, a reminder of what could be achieved through trust and understanding. We've received the long-range scans from the Spiral Arm expedition, Captain Mira said, her lower eyes scanning the data while her upper ones watched the dance. The sprites have shown them things we never dreamed existed. Spatial phenomena, new forms of life, even what might be passages to other galaxies. Alan smiled as Scout broke away from the group to perform a playful loop around the Academy. Some things never changed, no matter how much time passed. We didn't just learn to tame them, he said softly. We learned to be more like them, to see space not as something to conquer, but as something to dance with. Outside, the light show continued as sprites and their human partners moved through space in perfect harmony. They were no longer 2 separate species, but partners in the greatest dance in the universe. And somewhere out there, in the vast cosmic sea, new wonders waited to be discovered by those brave enough to learn new ways of moving through the stars.